police. And I think, Minister, you'll be rounding up on all the security, on all the police issues now.
So thank you, Monica, for that question, but your Nigerian colleague has left. Unfortunately, I don't think she had the opportunity to hear your question. There have been a lot of questions about the cost of police action on June the 30th. It's very interesting. You know, I'm hearing the conversation that we had at the last press conference was about what needs to be done or not done to deal with what appeared to be a looming threat of a violent shutdown. And today the conversation, most of the questions have been about concerns about strengthening law enforcement, about concerns about the ongoing challenges we face with respect to law enforcement, dealing with vigilante activity and so forth. The activities of various groups that may be fanning the flames. Just an interesting switch in the conversation that I noticed. Law enforcement costs money. That was the point I was making to the country. Our first responsibility in the build-up to June the 30th was to make it very clear that we will not have a repeat of July 21, that we will mobilize the necessary resources on the country, across the country to keep the country safe. Because we are all aware of the costs, financial, human, economic costs of a repeat of what happened, because we were not prepared for July the 21st. Second, the police budget on the basis also of contingencies. So that we are able to meet with every eventuality from a safety point of view. When we have SADC event, we have the resources in the budget, the current budget, to respond. When we have a security threat, we must be able to respond. So no new money was allocated. From the existing budget, we're able to respond. And what is that budget for? When you have a special operation, which is what happened on June the 30th, and we saw sporadic incidents of violence that threatened to get out of hand, you have to call up reservists. You have to pay overtime. You have to accommodate police officers across the country. We don't have accommodation facilities across the country. We have to pay for that. And on the back of this operation, like Operation Shun, we have existing law enforcement initiatives to reduce crime. We are using this mobilization to strengthen our efforts to fight crime, including organized crime. And as Minister Shiveni keeps reminding me to remind you, these are intelligence-driven operations. So one of the objectives I'm hoping we're going to achieve in the run-up to the elections, and nobody here will say that we shouldn't be budgeting to ensure that we have a peaceful election. And we've already seen, I think 12 councillors have already been murdered. Must I, as a police minister, sit back and say, well, I'm not going to spend the resources that are required to ensure that those who are killing councillors are investigated, that they brought to book, that our election isn't safe and secure. This last registration event, the head of the Independent Electoral Commission told me a few days ago that that the police operation that they saw was the best ever around the registration weekend, and we've got another one coming up. And in the next 6 months, we're not just thinking about June the 13th. Next 6 months, we are going to keep the country safe as the tensions rise in the country, going to keep the country safe, and we are going to reduce crime by mobilizing the necessary resources. Minister Kubai indicated to you that one of the reasons why we had success on June the 30th was that we mobilized our communities. We mobilized our CPF structures. We mobilized our patrollers from communities who told me that they are going to make sure that they will not have a repeat of June the 21st. And I want to applaud the police for the responsibility with which they kept the country safe. And I want to applaud the marchers for observing the law, for acting with responsibility for the most part. I really appreciated that. That's the way we must do things in our country, including expressing our democratic freedoms. So the money was well spent on June the 30th. What conversation would we have been having had we had a repeat? Now, massive destruction of property, maximum destruction of lives, as we saw on June the 21st, we did not have a repeat. So I think it's time to recognize that the country did well on June the 30th, that our law enforcement agencies did exceptionally well. We had the support of the army, we had the support of the intelligence agencies, and the South African police services demonstrated what they can achieve acting within the framework of our Constitution. That's my answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Cachalia. Thank you for the questions. We need to indicate that the work that is being done to improve safety and security of the country. And majority of the work that you are not seeing that is linked is the work around what we are doing on organized crime. Even the work that is led, as the Minister Chairperson of the IMC indicated, the work that is led by the GMs of labor and workplace inspections, which are now going to extend to hijacked buildings, supporting bylaw enforcement at municipalities, in particular in the metros of Johannesburg, Tshwane, eThekwini, Gqeberha, and Cape Town, and the other smaller municipalities where we've got hijacked buildings. That work is part of this work. So therefore, the totality of the expenditure that we are dealing with is also improving the safety and security of South Africans. Those of you who have seen the improvements in the city of Johannesburg in terms of the bylaw enforcement with the hijacked buildings and the removal of illegal trading on the streets and the pavements of Johannesburg, you'll notice that. On the issue that about the SIU work at Home Affairs and the vetting, the SIU was commissioned through a presidential proclamation. We started to do investigation as part of our quest, and that's why we've always reiterated the work to deal with corruption, but also to deal with the recurrence and the scourge of illegal immigration has not started now because of the protesters. The work started way before when government, and Minister Kubai said it the previous briefing, that when government does something, we are not acknowledged. It's only when the noise comes from other sectors that you then want to give credit for the work that government has been doing. So that work, SIU received a presidential proclamation, and part of the outcomes is the findings of members of the immigration in Home Affairs who were pocketing monies, though they earn very low salaries. And part of those, some are in the disciplinary processes, some have already been expelled, and the process of recovery of the ill-gotten gains, as Minister Kubai has indicated, of Kara, is already underway. In terms of vetting, because that is the responsibility of the State Security Agency, the vetting, what we have done, as we indicated during our budget vote, we have categorized departments, because previously the focus went on senior management and supply chain officials. But now we have categorized critical departments and agencies across the public sector. So it's not limited only in government departments, across the public sector, which means SOCs, means municipalities, provincial and national departments that are critical or that are susceptible to corruption. And then we undertaking vetting on that. As part of that work in Home Affairs, we have already targeted the project management office of Home Affairs. We've targeted a number of categories. We have also increased our own capacity, moving to e-vetting, electronic vetting, so that we can then have sufficient capacity. You know, we are currently vetting the senior management of the police, not only up from brigadier level up, we are also dealing with the metro municipalities. We have started with Ekurhuleni. We are going to Johannesburg, Tshwane, and eThekwini, and the city of Cape Town will be the last one. We are building that, we have that capacity that we're working, and that our vetting includes, we have strengthened the work of vetting, the component of vetting that dealt with lifestyle audits, to make sure that lifestyle audits are then dealt with. And we are no longer doing it, though vetting, the security clearance certificate remains valid for 5 years. Lifestyle audits are annual, so that because we can keep track of the process. And part of the improvements in the vetting outcomes is that if we find you, if we fail you vetting and deny you a security clearance, in terms of the regulations, we are now obliged to report you to law enforcement agencies so that they can then do the investigation for your prosecution. As part of what we are using, what we call passive intelligence, to strengthen law enforcement in the country. And I need to indicate the one thing, just supporting what Minister Cachalia has indicated. Part of what we are seeing now with the work, with the activities of checking the documentation and non-documentation, we are seeing communities taking that on their own hands. And that's why we've engaged through the president with traditional leaders to make sure that we partner with the National House of Traditional Leaders and the provincial houses of traditional leaders to make sure that citizens do not take the law into their own hands, and they can follow a process that is guaranteed. On the issue around the spaza shops, the Department of Small Business Development continues to register spaza shops, and there are requirements. You'll recall, even when the city of Johannesburg was taken to court about informal traders and micro traders by the Seri Group, the city was granted the permission to make sure that everybody who has the relevant papers is in the country can trade at designated places. The other issues that the municipalities will have to deal with is the issue of spaza shops that are mushrooming all over, which are not necessarily designated. Part of the work that is being done by the IMC includes the work to support environmental health inspectors. As you recall, last year we had to deal with the foodborne poisoning. I'll hand over to the chairperson to close up. Thanks.
Thank you very much, colleagues, for that. I think we confirm that we continue to do the work. We'll do these media briefings as they go. As Minister Cachalia was saying, they are changing in shape as we proceed and form. But I guess this is what we want to communicate to South Africans. The president, when he did the media briefing, he spoke on 5-point plan that he wanted to see government responding to and implementing. And the IMC remains committed in implementing that 5-point plan as instructed by the head of state. We further reiterate that those within the borders of the Republic must be here legally and must respect our laws. We urge all South Africans and all those within our borders, they must desist from conducting illegal and unlawful raids. Only law enforcement agencies can do this. We are urging South Africans to share this information with us so that we can track where the activities are happening and monitor the enforcement of the law as the IMC. There's a point, it's not raised, but I need to clear it. Because there's a misunderstanding of South Africans about citizens' arrest in terms of Criminal Procedure Act. And if we were to do what colleagues or communities are doing, it means if I have a break-in in my house, I will not call police, but I will say I'm doing citizen arrest. The fact that when a break-in my house or a crime is committed on my premises, I go and call police because I'm not a law enforcement agency. And therefore, when an activity has happened, we must call the police must enforce the law. So I want to urge South Africans, please stop the raids. Please stop taking the law in your hands because there shall be consequences. Allow law enforcement agencies to deal with these matters. We have proven that we are dealing with it. Give us space, don't redirect our programs, and allow us to do that work. We reiterate that South Africa is a sovereign state and must be allowed to protect itself and its citizens. Most importantly, South Africa as a sovereign state must be allowed to determine its laws, its policies, and to enforce them. We must not have another state telling us or another citizens of other countries telling us how we must do our laws and how we must enforce them. We are a sovereign state as the Republic. It's a right we have fought for, and it's a right that must be respected. As a state amongst family of nation, it stands within its own powers. We have received feedback from, as the IMC, from the head of state and the IMC and the Minister of DECO, saying that countries, especially in the continent, both heads of states and ministers, supporting us in enforcing our laws and ensuring that we protect the integrity of the Republic. So there's no misunderstanding from governments on the continent in terms of us implementing our laws. From the reports we get from Minister Lamula, and that's why he kept on saying, people are saying they understand that we must enforce our laws, and can our law enforcement agencies be seen enforcing the law? Like we've read out the number of people that have been arrested before our courts. We'll continue to keep the stats in terms of enforcement of the law. But we also say as government, through the head of state and through the Minister of DECO, we've been engaging, will continue to engage with our sister countries because migration is not just a South African problem. It's a global problem. And all of us have to work towards managing it. Many countries actually have faced similar challenges like us. Within the continent, going as far back, where there have been countries where send people out, others retaliating. We've seen in global platforms where this has happened. The history is there to narrate for itself. And we want to say, because it's a challenge, and we've said it's a push and pull factor, there are issues that are actually leading for people leaving their countries, being in South Africa, and those who are leaving South Africa being in other countries. And what we need as Africa is to implement Agenda 2063 in ensuring that our continent prospers. There's economic growth on the continent. There's opportunities for younger people on the continent in our countries, but we silence the guns so that those who are fleeing their countries are able to retain themselves within the countries. This is an obligation that we have as leaders of this continent, but also we understand our role and responsibility as South Africa to be able to contribute towards that. That's why we reiterate that refugees who come to South Africa, asylum seekers who come to South Africa, seeking assistance from the Republic, based on our laws, based on our international obligation, we shall be able to support them because it's what we have committed to. And that's why we separate the illegal immigrants from refugees and asylum seekers. What this IMC has been able to do is to identify those areas, and we can confirm the number that we have counted of 53,000, over 53,000 of repatriations and deportation are not asylum seekers, are not refugees. These are people who've been in the Republic illegally. And the law does warrant and require us to do so. We urge all South Africans as we conclude, civil society movements, business, communities, but most importantly, South Africans, our law enforcement agencies, let's continue to work together to manage this migration in the interest of our country, protecting its image, protecting its sovereign, but most importantly as well, to the interest of South Africa and her people. Thanks, Program Director.
After 2.5 hours of interaction, the government of South Africa is accountable and responsive to the needs of the people. This brings us to the end of this briefing. Thank you very much all for coming. Thank